It started with the sound of a hiss. That sharp, ugly hiss of spray paint cutting through the night air. And when I stepped out of my house, heart pounding, jaw clenched, I froze. My garage door was dripping in fresh black letters that screamed across the metal. Eyesore. My stomach dropped. My hands curled into fists. Who the hell would do this? And then, of course, I saw her, Karen, standing there in her pastel pink sweatsuit, the can still in her hand. Eyes locked on me with that smug little smirk that made me want to scream. You think this neighborhood's your trash bin? She snapped, voice shrill, carrying through the quiet street. Your garage is an embarrassment. I did the community a favor. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. A favor. Was she serious? My garage wasn't even that bad. Sure, I hadn't painted it in a few years, but it was structurally fine. And even if it was ugly, since when did she get to play judge, jury and executioner with a can of spray paint? Oh, you've lost your mind, I muttered, stepping closer, hearing the crunch of gravel under my shoes. That's vandalism. You just destroyed my property. Karen scoffed, tossing her hair back like she was starring in some cheap soap opera. Call it what you want, but the homeowners association has my back. Everybody agrees this eyesore ruins the street's value. Oh, the audacity. I almost laughed, but it came out as a bitter, shaky exhale instead. The homeowners association. Of course. Karen had her claws in the board like a puppet master, whispering poison in their ears at every meeting. She wasn't president, but she might as well have been. Still, I had evidence now. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out slowly, hit record and aimed it straight at her while she was still clutching the dripping spray can. Her smile faltered, just for a second. You really want to do this? I asked, voice low, shaking but steady enough. Because you're about to regret every second of this little stunt. The look in her eyes, a flicker of panic, gone in an instant, replaced with her usual venom. She stormed off, muttering under her breath, leaving me staring at the ugly word across my garage that seemed to burn deeper every second I looked at it. God, it was humiliating. The neighbors peeked out from behind blinds. Someone snickered across the street. My throat tightened, but I swallowed it down. No, not this time. I wasn't going to be her victim. The next morning, I marched down to city code enforcement with my phone, the video and the paint-stained rag I'd wiped off the garage. The officer's face went from bored to alert in seconds as he watched Karen on my screen, mid-spray, declaring her favor to the neighborhood. This isn't just homeowners association drama. The officer said firmly, that's criminal mischief. And since she painted a derogatory message visible from the street, it violates city property codes too. She'll be cited. Boom. My heart soared. Finally, a crack in her perfect armor. Days later, a city inspector came out, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of the graffiti, nodding along grimly. Karen, of course, came stomping out of her house the moment she saw the city truck. What do you think you're doing? She screeched, her voice cutting through the air like nails on a chalkboard. The inspector didn't even blink. Ma'am, this is a code violation. Spray painting another resident's property is vandalism and defacement. You'll be held responsible for damages, repairs, and any fines. I swear, I heard her gasp so loud it echoed. She tried to talk over him, tried to wave her hands like some desperate magician covering a failed trick. But his garage. Look at it. He was bringing down our property values. The inspector just raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, your opinion of aesthetics doesn't give you the right to break the law. Oh, God, that line. I wanted to frame it. Karen's face went red, then purple. She stomped her foot like a toddler who didn't get dessert. This isn't fair. I was trying to help. Help yourself, the inspector muttered, scribbling on his clipboard. You'll be receiving notice of your fines and mandatory repair responsibilities within the week. I nearly choked trying to hold back my laugh. But it got better. It got so much better. A week later, the city letter came and I swear I almost heard Karen scream through the walls when she opened hers. The fines alone were steep. Hundreds for vandalism. More for graffiti cleanup ordinances. But the kicker. She was legally obligated to restore my garage to its previous condition. Using licensed contractors approved by the city. No DIY cover-up. No cheap paint job. Full professional restoration. And who had the power to approve the contractor's work once it was done? Me. Sweet justice. Karen tried to weasel her way out of it. Of course. She called me, voice dripping with fake sugar, trying to convince me to just let it slide if she covered the paint herself. I leaned back in my chair, phone to my ear and let out a long, slow sigh. Karen, you wanted to play homeowners association cop. Now you get to pay like one. We'll see each other at the final inspection. The silence on the other end. Priceless. But the twist. The neighborhood turned on her. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Word spread fast. Thanks to my video. About what she'd done. People she thought were her allies started keeping their distance. Conversations hushed when she walked by. Someone even stuck a cheap plastic spray can in her yard as a prank. I nearly cried laughing when I saw it. And then came the day of the repair. A crew of painters showed up with ladders, sanding tools, primer and gallons of top-grade paint. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, face twisted like she'd bitten into a lemon. The crew leader nodded to me respectfully. We'll make it like new, sir. Karen snapped. This is ridiculous. His garage looked terrible before and now he's getting a free renovation because of me. I turned, locked eyes with her and smirked. Funny how karma works. The sound of the sanders buzzing. The sharp scrape of paint being stripped. The hiss of spray guns covering my garage in smooth, perfect coats. It was like a symphony. Every noise felt like a victory. By the end of the week, my garage looked brand new. Better than it ever had. Fresh paint. Polished trim. Even a little weather seal along the bottom. All on Karen's dime. And the final inspection. I dragged it out. Walking slow. Running my hand along the surface like I was some picky art critic. Karen was practically vibrating with rage. Her jaw so tight I thought her teeth might shatter. Looks good, I finally said, patting the wall. Passes inspection. I'll never forget the strangled little noise she made. Half growl, half sob. But here's the kicker. The Homeowners Association board. They were done with her. The embarrassment. The fines. The video of her spray painting like a deranged teenager. It was too much. At the next meeting, they voted her out of any committee involvement. No more power. No more influence. Just Karen. The woman who painted herself into humiliation. Now every time I pull into my driveway, I look at that gleaming garage and smile. Not just because it's beautiful, but because it's a monument to poetic justice. A constant reminder that when Karen tried to shame me, she only destroyed herself. And sometimes, late at night, when the neighborhood is quiet, I think back to that first hiss of spray paint. I can almost hear it still, like a warning, like the spark that lit the fire that burned her whole empire down. She thought she'd written eyesore on my garage, but in the end, she just painted one big, ugly word across her own reputation. And you know what? She'll never scrub that clean. They cut our power during an ice storm, on purpose, to save a few bucks on their HOA bill, and I swear to God, it nearly killed a kid and blew half their yard sky high. It started with a low hum, then a pop, not loud at first, just enough to make your ears twitch like something was off in the air. You know? I was out back trying to thaw a water line with my propane torch when I noticed the porch light flicker then go out. A full blackout, right in the middle of the worst winter storm we'd seen in years. Wind howling like it had teeth, snow coming in sideways. That kind of cold that makes your bones feel hollow. And I wasn't the only one. Whole block went dark. But here's the thing, only our side of the neighborhood. Just the ones who hadn't complied with some new energy-saving HOA mandate. Yeah. A pilot program, they called it. You ever hear of a pilot program that involves two middle-aged sisters in matching Patagonia vests sneaking around at night with bolt cutters and headlamps? Let me back up a second. The Karen sisters Angela and Darlene had taken over the HOA like it was a damn political coup. Their big mission? Slash heating costs. Cut emissions. Look good in the local paper, maybe win some Green Neighborhood of the Year award. Problem is, their idea of conservation meant cutting off outdoor gas heaters, banning emergency generators, and get this, installing lockboxes around thermostats in shared properties. Which was illegal. But nobody wanted to push them. Not after what happened to the Parker family's garage. And their boat. Whole thing just vanished after they spoke up at a board meeting. So yeah, people were scared. But I wasn't. My sister-in-law has lupus. Cold weather flares it up real bad. So we had 2 heaters running 24/7 electric upstairs. Gas backup on the porch just in case. And guess what? That little propane unit is what saved our butts that night and almost turned their front yard into a crater. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I saw them. 2 figures moving down the side alley between houses, bundled up like Arctic ninjas. One had a wire cutter. The other held a clipboard. I kid you not, in a blizzard. With a clipboard. I recognized them even through the storm, Angela's square posture and Darlene's puffy parka with that awful neon scarf she always wore like a sash of entitlement. They were going panel to panel, yanking fuses, flipping breakers on people's private property like it was a game. That's when I heard the boom. Not just a pop, this was boom. A dull, violent whump that rattled our window panes and lit the snowbank behind their fence in a flash of orange. I bolted to the front yard just in time to see Darlene on the ground, screaming her hands over her ears. Angela was flat on her butt, covered in soot and holding what used to be a lockbox that had apparently gone nuclear. Smoke was pouring out of their side yard like a dragon exhaling shame and fiberglass. The gas unit they tampered with? Not mine. It was the Harisa's next door. Their disabled son needs constant heat regulation. That backup heater had been modified to self-ignite during outages. Karen's sisters didn't know that. They thought they were disabling a luxury, not a life-saving device. And instead of asking or reading the very clear warning label, they clipped the main line, caused a pressure buildup, and boom. The fire department arrived in under 6 minutes. I gave them everything. The footage from my Ring camera, the old maintenance logs, even the HOA emails where the sisters bragged about reclaiming energy zones with guerrilla conservation tactics. Yeah. Those words were actually in the emails. Jack đã nói. The smoke hadn't even cleared when Angela started yelling. It was a malfunction. A malfunction, not our fault. Like shouting the word loud enough could erase the scorch marks on their own damn lawn. Firefighters weren't buying it. Neither was Officer Landry, the cop who showed up second, still dusted with road salt and looking like he'd been pulled out of bed mid-dream. You could tell the minute he clocked the 2 of them in their designer snow boots and matching Save the Planet. Not the people beanies, he already had a migraine. Let me get this straight, he said, voice dry as burnt toast. You 2 were out here in an active snowstorm disabling gas heaters. By hand. Angela puffed up like a possum caught in a toaster oven. We had full HOA approval. Yeah. Landry raised an eyebrow. And did the Harisas approve you cutting power to their disabled son's emergency unit? 'Cause I've got his medical waiver right here. He held up his phone, already pulling up documents emailed from the fire captain on scene. And this one's stamped by the city. That heater's legally required. So unless your clipboard outranks a state permit. The silence was brutal. Meanwhile, Darlene was still curled up like a croissant on the curb, muttering. It wasn't supposed to explode, Angela said it wouldn't explode, over and over like a toddler who just saw Santa fall off the roof. Let me tell you something, watching 2 HOA tyrants come face to face with actual accountability, that's something I'd pay admission to see again. especially when Angela tried to pivot into a full sob story. We didn't know. We thought it was just decorative. They didn't label it correctly. That's when I stepped forward, holding up my phone with the video zoomed in on the bright red decal that read, "Caution. Emergency medical heating unit. Do not tamper." "Didn't label it, huh?" I said, barely containing the smirk. "You walked past that label twice while checking your clipboard." The neighbors were starting to gather by then, most wrapped in blankets or still in pajamas. Old Mr. Delaney from the corner house shouted, "They cut my line too. I've got frost on my walls. I'm 86 and got arthritis in both knees." By the time the tow truck came to drag off what was left of their scorched Range Rover, which caught some shrapnel when the unit blew, the entire block was outside. But here's where it gets juicier. Turns out this wasn't a one-night operation. Officer Landry had barely scratched the surface when he found out the Karen sisters had cut power to at least 14 homes over the past month. One of them was a rental that housed a single mom and her baby. Both ended up in the ER the week before from hypothermia. The mom thought it was a power grid failure. It wasn't. The HOA email logs, which the fire department subpoenaed that same night, showed Angela and Darlene coordinating silent disconnection sweeps. Actual lists of homes. And next to some of the names, notes like chronic late fee offender or loud dog. They were targeting people, punishing them with cold. One neighbor, a young teacher named Maya, stepped forward with tears in her eyes and told the crowd her father had died of pneumonia the week prior. "I thought it was just the weather," she whispered. "But now I'm not so sure." It hit everyone like a gut punch. That's when Landry pulled out his radio and asked for backup. "Yeah, we're gonna need another unit down here. And notify the city inspector, we might have multiple felony charges pending." Angela finally shut up after that. She just sat on the curb next to Darlene, snow sticking to her eyelashes, mascara bleeding down like war paint, the clipboard still clutched in her white-knuckled grip like it might save her. Here's the kicker, though the HOA tried to deny all of it the next day. Released some PR garbage about unfortunate accidents and an overzealous initiative taken out of context. But someone not saying who had already emailed the entire neighborhood the bodycam footage, ring videos, and scanned email logs. By noon, it was on the local news. By 6 p.m., it was trending on Twitter under the hashtag HOA Heaters from Hell. The Karen sisters resigned before dinner. Not just from the board, they packed their bags and left town. Rumor has it they moved in with their cousin in Florida. Fitting. But the most poetic part? The Harris family, the ones with the disabled son, got a full home retrofit paid for by a GoFundMe that raised over $80,000 in 3 days. City Council got involved too, pushing new ordinances that required all HOAs to submit energy enforcement actions to a third-party oversight board. No more rogue thermostat patrols. No more ninja sabotage missions. Just peace. And heat. So yeah, they tried to freeze us out. But in the end, they lit a fire they couldn't control. What do you think? Should those two face jail time for what they did? Or was public shame enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and hey, if justice with a side of propane sounds good to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for sticking around. My hands were still shaking when I replayed that moment in my head. The way she stormed in, screaming, like she owned the ground under my boots. Can you imagine someone from the homeowners association just bursting onto your property, demanding to inspect, without even knocking? And then, you won't believe this. Everything flipped when my wife stepped forward and handed her a warrant. It started on one of those heavy, humid afternoons where the air feels like it's clinging to your skin. I was sitting on the porch, sipping sweet tea, listening to the cicadas buzz in the background. Just a regular day. Or so I thought. Out of nowhere, bang. The front gate slammed open so hard it rattled against the fence. My heart skipped. And then there she was, Karen, the homeowners association president. Her face red, her voice shrill like nails on a chalkboard. "This is a violation. I have to inspect your backyard now," she screeched, jabbing her finger toward the house like she was about to cast a curse. I froze. My first thought, inspect. Who does she think she is? Storming onto my land like a sheriff in some wild western standoff. My second thought. Oh no. Here we go again. See, this wasn't her first stunt. Karen had been on my case ever since my wife and I moved in. We painted our shutters navy blue. She sent a letter. We planted tomatoes along the fence line. Another letter. Heck, she even complained about the sound of my wind chimes once. But today was different. Today she didn't bother with paper threats. She came in swinging. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the wooden porch. Karen, you can't just walk onto my property like this, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. But my pulse was hammering. Oh yes, I can, she snapped, hair frizzing in the sticky heat as her eyes darted toward the backyard. I'm authorized. I know what you're hiding. If you won't let me through, I'll call the board and fine you $2,000. I blinked. What kind of fever dream was she living in? My wife, Elena, came out just then, holding a folder of documents she had been reviewing inside. She looked calm, almost too calm, the kind of calm that makes you think, oh, someone's about to get roasted. Elena, she just barged in, I said, gesturing wildly. Karen turned to my wife, practically foaming at the mouth. Your husband is obstructing homeowners association business. I demand access. Now. There was this pause. Just silence. Except for the buzzing cicadas. My wife inhaled deeply, then exhaled like she'd been preparing for this exact showdown. And then, she opened the folder. Karen leaned forward, ready to snatch it. But my wife slid a crisp, official-looking document right in front of her face. Funny you mention authorization, Elena said smoothly, because the only inspection happening here today is this one. Karen squinted. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes darted across the paper. And then I saw it. The instant all the fire drained from her. The flush in her cheeks went pale. A warrant. Not for us. Oh no. For her. I swear. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. But my wife had quietly been working with a county investigator for weeks. Why? Because Karen had been pocketing homeowners association fees, embezzling, faking inspection reports, harassing homeowners into paying extra fines and keeping the cash. And today was the day the warrant dropped. Oh my God, I whispered, my throat tightening with a mix of relief and adrenaline. You're kidding me. Karen stammered, stepping back as if the paper burned her retinas. This isn't. No, this is wrong. Her voice cracked, but Elena didn't budge. It's signed by a judge. Karen, you wanted to inspect us. Well, guess what? The county wants to inspect you. And I swear, for a split second, you could hear nothing but the creak of the porch boards under her trembling feet. Then came the chaos. Karen started shouting nonsense, waving her arms, trying to deny everything. She backed away, tripped over the garden hose, nearly toppled into the flower bed. You set me up. This whole neighborhood will regret this. She shrieked. Sirens wailed in the distance. My heart pounded harder. Was this real? Was it really happening? Karen, the self-appointed queen of the block, finally cornered. The sheriff's car rolled up, dust rising behind it. 2 deputies stepped out, calm but firm, hands on their belts. Karen spun toward them, flailing. Arrest them. They're violating homeowners association code. They're criminals. One deputy raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, the warrant is for you. That broke her. She froze again, this time with tears brimming in her eyes. She started babbling, pleading, bargaining. I didn't mean to. Listen, I can fix this. I can pay it back. But it was too late. The deputies read her rights right there on my lawn. Neighbors peeked from behind blinds, some even stepping onto their porches to watch. You could hear whispers ripple down the street like wildfire. And me, I just stood there, stunned, half wanting to laugh, half wanting to cry. My wife's hand slipped into mine, steady and strong. For years, Karen had been the thorn in everyone's side. She bullied retirees, fined young families for toys left out, threatened to tow cars from driveways. She thought she was untouchable. But in that single, surreal moment, everything turned. And here's the kicker. Later that week, when the official reports came out, the whole neighborhood learned she'd siphoned nearly 50 grand from homeowners association funds over 3 years. 50 grand. No wonder she was so desperate to cover her tracks. People gasped. Some shouted. Others cursed under their breath. And me, I just shook my head. Unbelievable, I muttered, though deep down, it all made sense. But here's what stung. The twist that left me rattled even after she was gone. A few of the board members had known. They weren't innocent. They'd looked the other way, let Karen run wild, because it benefited them too. Sure, she went down, but the board, they slipped through the cracks, untouched. That bitter taste, still lingers. Justice, half served. Karen lost everything. She was banned from the homeowners association, arrested, shamed, even moved out of the neighborhood. But those snakes on the board, they're still slithering around, still pretending to be leaders. Sometimes, when I sit on my porch at night, I hear the wind rustling through the trees and I think back to the look on Karen's face when that warrant hit her hands. Shock, rage, fear. A queen stripped of her crown. And yet, maybe that's the image that helps me sleep on the nights when the bitterness creeps in. Because no matter what, the neighborhood saw it. They all saw the mask ripped off. They saw her fall. And me, I'll never forget the sound of those sirens growing louder. The slam of the gate. The hush that fell over the street as justice, messy, imperfect justice, finally came crashing down on Karen's head. So if you're ever dealing with your own Karen, remember this, sometimes, when they scream the loudest, it's because they know their time is almost up. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more homeowners association drama stories that'll leave you gasping. I wasn't even looking for trouble that Saturday morning. All I wanted was to watch my nephew's soccer game, maybe sip a coffee in the sun. But trouble? Trouble found me before the first whistle even blew, wearing oversized sunglasses, a smug smile, and the most ridiculous faux designer purse I've ever seen. It was Karen. Both Karens, actually sisters, if you can believe it. The HOA president, Marlene, and her equally self-important younger sister, Crystal. And oh, they weren't just here to support the kids. No, these two had a little side business going, right there on the sideline, in full view of anyone with eyes. I first noticed it when I saw Crystal hand a little laminated card to some guy in a baseball cap. She whispered something. He slipped her a folded 20. And just like that, he walked off. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just a casual exchange. The way she shielded the card from view, the way her fingers lingered over the cashier. I've seen that kind of quiet deal-making before. Then it clicked. I'd heard rumors. Fake HOA. Cards that supposedly prove you're an HOA member so you can bypass parking restrictions, access private pools, even bluff your way into neighborhood meetings to swing votes. They'd been popping up around our town like weeds, cheap laminates with the HOA's logo slapped on, dates forged in sloppy ink. And these two, they were printing them in Marlene's garage. I almost laughed out loud. Here was Marlene, queen of rules and order, the same woman who fined me $200 last spring because my trash bins were visible from the street, for exactly 17 minutes, now running an actual forgery ring. Oh, the irony. I pulled out my phone and pretended to scroll, but really, I was recording. Crystal passed off another card to a man with his kid in tow. This time, I caught a clear shot of the fake ID, and the worst part? They'd used the HOA's Real embossed seal, which means this wasn't just petty mischief. This was straight-up fraud. I decided to keep my mouth shut for the moment. You can't just march over and scream, "I caught you." When someone's committing a crime, you have to let them dig their own hole nice and deep. The first half of the soccer game went by in a blur, not because I was paying attention to the kids, but because I was counting. By my estimate, they'd sold at least 12 counterfeit IDs before the ref's halftime whistle. 12. That's hundreds of dollars in cash, tax-free, right under everyone's noses. When the teams took a water break, Marlene strutted toward the snack stand like she owned the place. Crystal stayed behind, flipping through a small plastic box of cards. I decided that was my chance. I strolled up casually. "Busy morning?" I asked, tilting my head toward the box. Her eyes narrowed instantly. "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, come on," I said, letting just a hint of mockery into my voice. "Fake HOA? Selling them at your nephew's soccer game? That's bold." "You should mind your own business," she hissed. But her fingers tightened around the box, and that's when I saw it, a ledger book, half sticking out from her tote bag. Names, dates, payment amounts. Crystal wasn't just sloppy. She was practically gift-wrapping the evidence for me. "You know," I said, lowering my voice, "forging official IDs is a felony, not a fine, not a slap on the wrist. Felony. And doing it on school property. Yeah, that's going to be a problem for you." Her face went pale, but she tried to play it cool. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, I think I can," I replied, tapping my phone screen. "And I'm not the only one watching." Right on cue, Officer Ramirez. Yes, that Officer Ramirez, the dad of one of the players, stepped out from the crowd. He'd been standing just a few feet away the whole time, sipping his coffee, listening. The look on Crystal's face was pure panic. Marlene came back just in time to see her sister cornered. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "What's going on?" Ramirez said evenly. "Is that we've got probable cause for forgery and fraud. And you, ma'am, might want to take a seat, because we're going to have a conversation." I swear I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered all the times Marlene had humiliated neighbors at HOA meetings, waving her little rule book like it was the Constitution. The next few minutes felt surreal. Ramirez called in backup. A second officer arrived, and while one spoke to Marlene, the other began flipping through Crystal's box of IDs. It was a mess, mismatched photos, fake names, even a few cards that claimed lifetime membership in neighborhoods that didn't exist. Parents started whispering. Kids were asking what was going on. And me? I just stood there watching the queen bees crumble. Marlene's voice rose. "This is a misunderstanding. These aren't real IDs." "Oh, you just made them look real?" Ramirez asked, one eyebrow raised. "You do realize the HOA seal is a registered trademark? And you forged it on government-grade laminate." Her mouth opened, then closed. No comeback this time. The arrest happened faster than I expected. Both sisters were handcuffed, right there on the grass. Crystal's face was blotchy and red. Marlene's was stone-cold fury, like she couldn't believe the world would dare turn against her. As they were led toward the parking lot, Marlene locked eyes with me. And in that one look, I swear I could hear her thinking, "You did this." She wasn't wrong. But here's the kicker, the twist I didn't see coming. As Ramirez passed by me, he said quietly, "You might want to check your HOA's bylaws. There's a clause about fraudulent activity by board members. It voids all fines issued during their tenure." My heart skipped. If that was true, Marlene's little reign of terror, all those bogus fines, mine included, would be wiped clean. She hadn't just fallen. She'd pulled her whole empire down with her. And that, my friend, was the sweetest halftime show I've ever seen. The fallout hit faster than anyone expected. By Monday morning, word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Parents who'd been at the soccer game were posting videos online, Marlene being led away in handcuffs, Crystal sobbing as officers read her rights. The HOA's official Facebook page went from weekly announcements to an all-out comment war in less than 24 hours. I got an email from the HOA treasurer before breakfast, Subject line: Special Emergency Meeting Board Member Misconduct. Inside, it was short and brutal. Due to confirmed criminal charges against President Marlene R., the HOA will be suspending all enforcement actions and conducting a full audit of past fines and citations. That little sentence? It was worth more to me than gold. By midweek, the county clerk's office had posted the official charges: online forgery of a government seal, fraudulent use of identification, and conspiracy to commit fraud. And then came the kicker: a civil lawsuit from several residents claiming restitution for fraudulent fines and emotional distress. I nearly choked on my coffee when I read my own name on the plaintiff list. Turns out, Ramirez had quietly suggested to a few neighbors that we join forces. Crystal flipped almost immediately. She cut a deal, providing emails, receipts, even photos of Marlene's garage printing station. The prosecution didn't have to dig far. One look at those emails, and it was clear they'd been selling hundreds of fake IDs, some even to non-residents who used them to sneak into HOA-run facilities. Marlene? She tried to fight it. She even had the audacity to claim it was just a fundraiser for her son's soccer team. But the judge wasn't buying it, especially not after seeing the ledger book with her own handwriting, listing sales goals and monthly targets. The day of the hearing, she walked into court with that same stiff-backed arrogance she'd worn at HOA meetings, but she walked out pale and trembling. Bail was set high. The lawsuit was moving forward, and she was officially removed from the HOA board. What really twisted the knife was the HOA's announcement that all fines issued during her presidency were null and void, and in some cases, refundable. Neighbors lined up at the community office like it was Black Friday, waving their receipts and demanding their money back. I passed Marlene once more before she disappeared from our streets for good. She didn't glare this time. She didn't say a word. Just looked at me with this hollow, stunned expression, like she'd finally realized she wasn't untouchable. And as for me, let's just say I'll never forget the sound of the gavel hitting that bench, sealing her fate. Fraud might get you a quick buck, but it'll cost you everything in the end. If you enjoyed hearing how karma caught up with this HOA tyrant, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss the next unbelievable lawsuit story that proves justice can be just as sweet as revenge.